Prepare for disappointment in this Mad Musings, because I'm talking about one of, if not the biggest disasters in licensed RPG products, the Aliens adventure game. Not the Alien RPG by Free League Publishing that's getting some good reviews. No, I'm talking about the Aliens RPG by Leading Edge Games, written back in 1995. Or, more accurately, the Colonial Marines sourcebook, because this game narrows its scope down so far it writes itself into a box. Oh, and prepare for math. My God, the math. But enough build-up. I'm Mr. Welch, and get ready to relive your favorite moments from the movie Aliens with Hicks, Hudson, and Wierzbowski. It's time to talk Aliens. Aliens was the product of Leading Edge Games, a company that is most famous. Okay, famous is the wrong word. In the unholy trinity of bad RPGs, Leading Edge holds the third spot with Phoenix Command, where World of Cinnabar was world building gone horribly off the rails, and fatal is why unqualified people shouldn't be allowed anywhere near an RPG. Phoenix Command is what happens when a literal rocket scientist designs a game that he wants to be realistic. There's nothing offensive at all about Phoenix Command. It's also not playable. I am looking for a copy for a future review, but right now I'm just reviewing its watered-down offspring. Take that to heart. No matter how complicated this game is, Phoenix Command is several times that. The game was published in 1995 and only focuses on the movie Aliens. It doesn't cover Alien. It doesn't cover Alien 3, despite Alien 3 actually being several years before this was published. It only has characters from the movies, so you get to know the states of the various Marines like Drake, Vasquez, and Wierzbowski, or you can make your own. It also doesn't cover anything from the very excellent Colonial Marine Technical Manual, though that did come out in the same year. So if you want to play a crew of miners fighting off an alien, you can't. You can't be convicts trapped on a world with them. If you want to be smugglers and criminals, that's a no-go as well. And if you suddenly have the desire to be citizens of a small Midwest town fighting off the military, as well as aliens and predators, you need to go lay down and sleep it off. This game only lets you play Colonial Marines. It pretty much says if you want to play anything else, wing it. You can't play an android. You can't play a corporate executive. You can't play a civilian advisor. In short, Bishop, Burke, and Ripley are right out. But Wierzbowski is completely okay. This narrows the scope of the game badly. Aliens takes everything it can from the movie. Every weapon and vehicle you saw in the movie is in the game. Hicks has his shotgun. Drake has his smart gun, though for whatever reason it's never called a smart gun, just a machine gun. Crow has his pulse rifle, Gorman has his pistol, and Wierzbowski has his flame unit. The game adds a submachine gun, a sniper rifle, and a missile launcher, but that's the extent of the new weapons, and they don't even have any art for them. Character generation involves rolling 4d6 plus 48, then dividing that total between 5 different stats. No stat below 3, and super high stats do cost quite a bit more, so an intelligence of 21 costs 25 points. There's no limit besides you can't go below 3, which that causes some weird possibilities because that means you can get Marines that can't write their name, can't lift a rifle, has a serious case of brittle bone disease, or is apparently missing toes. There's no statistical floor to the stats for a member of the Marine Corps. I got drummed out of MEPS for the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard for a torn Achilles tendon from freshman year. The Marines would have tackled me at the door. Granted, this was during a drawdown in 1992, but the Marines still have high standards. There's 4 secondary stats in leadership, charisma, perception, and motivation that are determined by 3d6 straight down, but don't worry too much about those because they don't connect to any skills, they aren't defined at all in the game, and they're never mentioned again. Then you roll on the character background chart, which assumes every character comes from Earth. Despite you being part of the Colonial Marine Corps, and with dozens of colonies listed, the rules don't give you options for off-world characters in the slightest. All the background does is give you merit points, which determine your boot camp options. If you want to be an officer, you have to have high stats or just get lucky on the education and social roll. Most characters are going to be grunts, though a few might get auxiliary roles like pilots. Once you've got that determined, you get your basic training, which gives you a number of chances to increase your skills. God help you if you don't roll well and get the underpowered garrison duty. And this is where your players are going to mutiny. This game's advancement and experience system makes Ebenezer Scrooge look generous. Aliens has the learning chance. This is your intelligence plus your motivation minus 10. So Wierzbowski, with his intelligence of 10 and motivation of 12, has a 12% learning chance. Every time he gets an opportunity to advance, he has to roll a 12 or less on percentiles. Your number of learning chances is typically 1 to 2 a year in your background, and 2 to 3 chances per adventure. That's a 90% chance of failure on average to raise a skill 1 point. And higher skill levels require multiple successful learning chances in a row. There's no way to raise your learning chance, by the way. Your stats can't be improved at all. If you want to go up to master level, it requires 2 learning skills in a row. Fail either one and you lose the chance. Grandmaster requires 3 straight successes. That's a 1 in 100 chance and a 1 in 1,000 chance for success for those keeping track at home. Your players are going to start sucking, and chances are they're never going to get much better. It's a lot like Call of Cthulhu with its slow advancement progress, only with the illusion of hope as you watch your XP points evaporate with one failed learning chance after another. Now determine your action point. Take your intelligence stat, find your gun combat skill level, and look it up on a chart. On average, you'll get 4 action points with a few bonus points for very high agility or just no encumbrance. These determine everything you do in a turn. Everything. Move 6 feet, action point. Turn 90 degrees, action point. Peek around the corner, action point. Get ready to shoot your gun, 2 action points. Reload your pistol, 8 action points. Crawl 6 feet, 5 action points. Every single action requires at least 1 action point. You can take actions that require multiple turns to actually complete. It turns any actual combat into a total slog, as you can imagine. And that brings me to combat. This is Phoenix Command Lite. Remember that as we go down this rabbit hole, because if you're not a mathematical engineer, you're going to get very lost very quickly. Leading Edge created the most complicated combat system probably in the history of mankind. That's not an exaggeration. For example, after Private Wierzbowski got his helmet ripped off by a xenomorph, which gives Gorman a false death reading, he pulls up his flame unit and torches the bug that's trying to kill him. Then he grabs Crow's pulse rifle, grabs a magazine, reloads it, and shoots another bug. He has a skill rating modifier of 0. Consulting the chart, he's got a +1 bonus to hit a xenomorph warrior. Per chart 5B, a low rate of fire burst weapon gets 2 shots in attack and a +1 bonus for aiming. So he looks at his chance to hit on another chart. With the bug being at close range, he's got a 39% chance to hit. So he spends 4 of his 5 actions to aim, raising his chance to hit to get a 67% chance. Say both shots hit. Then switch over to chart 6D for attacking aliens, and you roll percentiles to find the hit locations. Say you roll a 22 and an 89. That gives you a chest hit and a leg hit. Then you have to roll against glancing hits, with the pulse rifle requiring a 6+ to disable the leg or to just kill the alien outright. Anything less is a glancing hit that deals no damage. If an alien charged at him and got to very close range, he could still use the flamethrower that he possesses. At this range, with all the bonus modifiers, the flame unit automatically hits and kills, but it can't fire past very close range. So Wierzbowski has killed 2 aliens, is cut off from the unit, and spends his next 5 actions to leave through the emergency exit in the reactor room to see if he can rescue Apone and Dietrich, while Hicks, Hudson, and Vasquez fight their way out the other exit. And if you were keeping track to see how many charts you needed to reference to see if you killed the alien, the answer was 5. Chart 4A gives you the statistics for the pulse rifle and the flame unit that you need to keep track of. Then you go over to chart 5A, which gives you your base chance to hit. Chart 5B determines the number of shots that can possibly hit. Chart 5C gives you all modifiers to your roll. And then you have to roll on chart 6D twice to determine the hit location on the alien, as well as whether you actually killed it. Still with me? Because we're not done yet. Then you get to the close combat section, which I'm not really going to take too much time to explain because I don't want to spend an hour discussing just this topic. There's a lot of rolling. There's even more charts. You have to pick your melee attack maneuver. Each one has a different action point cost. Then you consult the charts. You roll on those charts. Then cross-reference another chart, roll for damage, check for penetration, deal the damage, check for knockout, and check to see if the target has saved an action for a block, which goes onto another chart to see if the block was successful. Against aliens, you actually can't beat them in melee. You can stun them, but even weapons that could normally deal damage to them, they can't deal damage to aliens. The rules flat out say that the best you can do is just stun them, even if you hit them with a sledgehammer or a chainsaw, which aren't in the game. There's a lot of rules for the aliens, and they are about as grotesque as you can imagine. They automatically advance to short range without any chance of discovery. They close very quickly, and they're lethal in melee combat. Assuming you can figure out the rules for hand-to-hand combat, that is. They can easily TPK a party without too much effort because they're so lethal. They have 8 combat actions compared to your 4 or 5. Marines stand little chance against a large number of them, even if you do have a flame unit and a pulse rifle like Wierzbowski, for example. The book does extend the background of the alien setting a fair bit, but only for a few planets. It doesn't touch on Earth at all, but it gives some new information on about 40 planets, though with a few exceptions, it doesn't go into any detail at all. It talks in depth about the Harvesters, a large and hungry alien found on the planet Tartarus. It even gives mention to the Arcturans that were briefly mentioned by Frost and Spunkmeyer. The only other major war zone in Aliens that is talked about is the colony of Alexandria, which is an open revolt against the corporations. This gives you something other than aliens to shoot at, but it also gives you the problem that human-on-human combat is even more horrifically complicated, even more than fighting aliens. There's a ton of mechanics that they have you create that have no bearing on the game itself. It tells you how much money a Marine clears in a month, which is based on your skills. Hicks has 2 expert ratings, among others. It clears $2,000 a month, whereas Wierzbowski doesn't have any expert ratings or even any professional ratings, so he doesn't even make $50 a month. Then again, it doesn't really matter because there's almost nothing to spend it on. You're in the core. If you need a gun, you're supplied with a gun. If you want an apartment, those aren't really on the list. The easy answer, of course, is just to wing it. The problem is that's a lot of winging. There's no variety in the gear. There's the stock pistols, no variant. If you wanted to use the rules for Hicks's pump-action shotgun, that's easy enough. Double barrel, that's not in the rules. If Wierzbowski wants a 44 Magnum for dealing with aliens without everything glancing off, sorry, you're stuck with a 10mm semi-automatic. And creating new weapons is a pain because this is a leading-edge games product, which means there's a lot of lines to fill in to homebrew anything. They've got a section on vehicles and vehicular combat. It's pretty complicated, as you can expect, but the biggest problem is there's only a few vehicles in the game. You've got a dropship, an APC, and the frigate from the movie. The dropship does get a gunship variant in the rules. There's multiple forms of the frigate with system and corporate frigates. Combat knocks out systems, and there's a lot of systems on all of these. But it's hard to do an exciting ship battle when you're just rolling dice at each other. And for land combat, the APC is the only military vehicle given. Everything else is civilian. So you're not going to be fighting rebel tanks on Alexandria or taking a recon bike to scout out an enemy position. The RPG is awful. I think I've hammered that home by now. But there is a bright spot, because as much as the Aliens adventure game is one of the worst licensed role-playing games ever created, the Aliens board game is one of the best licensed board games ever created. It's tense, it's brutal, and it's surprisingly simple. The gameplay is spawn the aliens, move the Marines, move the aliens. Marines are slow and squishy, and aliens are fast and squishy. The board game excels because of its randomness. There's a chance that more than the number of expected bugs drop. They drop in random locations. In the first scenario, there's nowhere the Marines are safe. It has been described as Space Hulk with a personal grudge, but I've had a lot more fun with Aliens than Space Hulk. Looking at it, it's nothing special. The board is laminated paper. The pieces are cardboard stand-up. But the gameplay is never boring. You are never safe. It is almost impossible to save everyone in this game. I've played this game hundreds of times. I have saved everyone, including Burke, once. As you take casualties, the game gets much harder. Sometimes the first scenario is a cakewalk. Sometimes you'll lose half the squad in the first drop. You never know. The board game is stupid expensive today, even more so with the expansion, which is also worth it. There's a flash game on Newgrounds that lets you play the board game with a few scenarios missing, like the dropship fight that you're going to lose 99% of the time anyways, and the power loader fight, which you're going to win 99% of the time. I will link that into the description. If you still play flash games, you will lose hours playing this game. When you go over to Newgrounds, grab their Newgrounds player, because flash is not being supported anymore after the end of this year. It's not for the easily frustrated, so that's a warning. This game is almost sadistic in its difficulty rating. Getting any Marines back alive at the end of the game is a win. I do hope to review the new Alien game. I would say I hope it's better than this game, but that bar is so low that if they made that game worse, they'd had to do that intentionally. The flaws in this game system are legion. There's stats you never use. Improving your character is almost impossible. Combat requires multiple die rolls, and melee combat is headache-inducing. The game doesn't try to capture the first or the third movie, despite the game being printed after Alien 3. That's just because they probably didn't have the rights to Alien or Alien 3, but still, the scope is so restrictive, you'll get bored with it quickly. The game is greatly in demand on the secondhand market. Expect prices of $100 and up for it. It's not worth that. The board game commands similar prices for it and the expansion, and that is totally worth it, even if it is just paper and cardboard. For those that don't want to spend the money, waste hours over on the Newground game. You'll thank me later, or curse at me later. Depends on how much you like frustration. Next time around, I'm going to talk about superheroes with a game that I got all in for because it was new and different. Silver Age Sentinels by Guardians of Order. An interesting system, but with multiple flaws that did make the Mr. Welch list. So come back next time and I'll teach you how to summon 50,000 blue whales a turn. But until then, Drake, we are leaving.